I didn't plan to be alive that night. I wasn't searching for a miracle. I had already written the letter, set my phone on silent, and locked the door. The world had become a weight I no longer wanted to carry, and the idea of slipping away quietly seemed like the only mercy I could offer myself. It was raining hard, one of those heavy, relentless downpours that made the city feel even lonelier than usual. My apartment, once filled with the laughter of someone I loved, now echoed with silence. It had been 5 months since the breakup, 3 since I lost my job, and just under 1 since I stopped pretending I was okay. I remember sitting on the windowsill, staring out at the blurred lights, the world moving on without me. My hand trembled around a glass of whiskey I hadn't touched, and my eyes kept drifting to the pill bottle on the table. That's when I heard it, a knock. It was soft, almost hesitant. I froze. Who would come to me at this hour? I opened the door halfway, more out of confusion than intention. She stood there, drenched from rain, her hair clinging to her face, her coat soaked through. A stranger. Beautiful. Wide eyes filled with something I couldn't place. Urgency? Fear? Compassion? "Are you okay?" she asked. Her voice was soft, almost drowned by the storm outside. I blinked. "Do I know you?" "No," she said quickly. I live upstairs. I was coming back from work, and I saw your light. Something told me to check. I'm sorry if it's weird. I should have shut the door. I should have told her I was fine. But I didn't. Maybe part of me still wanted to be seen. Or saved. She hesitated, glancing at the rain behind her. "Can I come in just for a second? Just to dry off?" I nodded, stepping aside. She introduced herself as Mara. She was warm, quick to smile, and moved like someone who was used to being in uncomfortable situations. I offered her a towel, and she laughed, saying, "You know, I didn't plan to knock on a stranger's door tonight, but something told me I should." "Most people ignore what something tells them," I replied. "I'm not most people," she said and smiled. That smile stayed with me for a long time. We talked for almost an hour, about everything and nothing. She told me she worked at a late-night cafe, that she loved thunderstorms, and that sometimes she just liked walking in the rain to clear her head. I didn't tell her about the pills, or the letter, but I think she knew. As she got up to leave, she looked at me with eyes that felt too honest for someone I'd just met. "Promise me something," she said. "If you ever feel like falling, knock on my door first." I nodded. She reached into her bag, pulled out a folded piece of paper, and handed it to me, just in case you need someone to talk to. Her phone number. And then she was gone, swallowed by the storm again, just as suddenly as she arrived. That night, I didn't take the pills. It had been just over a week since that night on the bridge. 7 days since a stranger's hand gripped his own and pulled him back from the edge. Since her voice, soft, almost whisper-like, cut to the fog in his head, making him hesitate just long enough for her to act. Her name was Alara. She hadn't asked many questions. Instead, she sat beside him on a nearby bench, letting the silence wrap around them like a heavy blanket. For the first time in a long time, he didn't feel the urge to explain himself, and she didn't push. She only looked at him with those wide green eyes that shimmered under the glow of the city lights. Eyes that didn't judge, only understood. Now, they were meeting for coffee every day. It started simple, small talk and cautious smiles. But by the 4th meeting, he was already looking forward to her voice, her laugh, the way she tilted her head when she listened. Ilara had a warmth to her, like spring sunlight after a long winter. She didn't know the details of his divorce or how everything had collapsed, at least not because he told her, but she didn't need to. She just knew he was broken. And somehow, she made him feel like that was okay. He began to talk again. About small things at first. Music, books, why he never really liked Christmas. She shared bits and pieces, too. Her favorite tea, that she loved painting but hadn't done it in years, that her father left when she was young. There was a quiet sadness in her, too, but only made him feel closer to her. One evening, after their usual coffee run, she invited him to her apartment. It was only 2 buildings over from his, a modest 1-bedroom place, filled with the scent of lavender and the clutter of someone who lived with their heart on display. He noticed the bookshelves first, stacked with novels and psychology texts. Her walls were dotted with abstract paintings, some signed with her name. A small keyboard rested near the window. She blushed when he asked if she played. That night, she played him something soft and haunting. He didn't recognize the tune, but it made his chest ache. When she finished, he asked what it was. "I wrote it the night I met you," she said quietly. He didn't know what to say. But something shifted after that. The air between them grew heavier, not uncomfortable, but charged. The next day, she brought him a small sketch, a faceless figure standing at the edge of a bridge, a streak of light behind him. He didn't ask if it was him. He knew, and then she touched his hand, not as a friend, not as a stranger, as something else. From that moment, he was hers. The first few weeks with Alara were like stepping into sunlight after years in the dark. She brought warmth where there had been cold, laughter where there had been silence. Every morning, I'd wake up and still be amazed that she was there, her head resting on the pillow beside mine, her breath soft and steady. She made my apartment feel like a home, something I hadn't felt in years. We built quiet rituals together. She loved early mornings and would hum while making coffee, always the same gentle melody that I never quite recognized. She insisted we take walks every evening, even if it rained. "There's something honest about walking through discomfort," she once told me. That line stuck with me. I started going back to work, part-time at first. My co-workers noticed a change. They said I looked lighter, more present. And I had someone to go home to now, someone who cared, someone who chose me. Or so I believed. But there were small things, odd things, things I dismissed because I wanted so badly for this to be real. One night, I woke up to find her standing at the window, completely still, just staring out into the street. I asked if she was okay, and she replied, "Just thinking." Her tone was flat, distant. The next morning, she acted like nothing had happened. Another time, I found my journal out of place. It was closed, but not the way I'd left it. I had a habit of folding the corner of the last page I'd written on, and that corner was now perfectly straight. I asked her if she had touched it. She smiled and said no. But the biggest crack appeared the day I came home early from work. It was around 2 p.m., an early release. I opened the door quietly, not intending to surprise her, but what I heard as I entered stopped me cold. A man's voice, deep, clear, and speaking with urgency. "I told you this wasn't the deal. He's getting too comfortable." I froze. The voice was coming from the bedroom. My heart thudded violently in my chest as I slowly crept down the hallway. Then silence. When I stepped into the room, Alara was alone. She looked up from a book and smiled as if nothing had happened. "Home early," she said, like this was just another ordinary day. I scanned the room. No sign of anyone else. The window was slightly open. "Were you talking to someone?" I asked, trying to sound casual. She blinked. "No, just reading." Why? I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her. Maybe I had misheard. Maybe the voice was from a neighbor's TV. But that night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling and tried to replay the exact tone of that voice in my head. There was too much certainty in it to be fiction. A few days later, Alara suggested we go away for a weekend. "You need a reset," she said. "Let's go somewhere quiet. Just you and me." I agreed, though something inside me had shifted. The trip was peaceful, too peaceful. She was attentive, affectionate, almost overly perfect. It felt rehearsed, like she was trying too hard to distract me from something. And maybe she was. Late at night, she took my phone and playfully hid it. I laughed it off, thinking it was just a game. But when I got it back, my messages had been cleared. Every conversation thread, gone. She blamed a weird glitch. I didn't confront her. I told myself it was just another tech issue. But I started keeping a notebook again, writing down everything that seemed even remotely out of place. Her expressions, her silences, her reactions when I asked questions she didn't like. I even began looking her up online, something I'd never thought to do before. But I found nothing. No social media. No records. as if she didn't exist before the day she saved me. Then one day, I followed her. She said she was meeting an old friend from culinary school. I waited 10 minutes, then took a cab and tracked her through the city. She didn't go to a cafe. She didn't meet anyone. She went into a building I didn't recognize and stayed there for nearly an hour. When she emerged, she was with someone, a man in a gray coat. They didn't touch, but they moved in sync, like they knew each other well. I took photos, not to show anyone, but to remind myself that this was real. When she came home, she kissed me like always, cooked dinner, asked about my day. I smiled, nodded, and answered as if everything was fine. But inside me, something had snapped awake. This wasn't love. It was a game, and I had just realized I wasn't the player. I was the target. The next few days felt like living in a waking dream. Ilera was everything I didn't know I needed, compassionate, mysterious, and effortlessly present. We walked along riverbanks at night, talked about everything and nothing for hours, and spent quiet evenings reading or cooking together. For the first time in what felt like forever, I laughed without faking it. But then, small things started to feel off. One morning, while she was in the shower, I noticed her phone buzzing relentlessly on the coffee table. A name flashed on the screen, Dr. Kale. Not just once. 5, 6, 7 times. When she came back, the phone was silent, and I didn't ask. I didn't want to seem paranoid. I didn't want to ruin what we had. But the name lingered in my mind like a splinter under skin. That evening, I casually asked her if she had family nearby. She smiled, almost too quickly. No, not really. It's just me. Always been just me. The next day, while I was organizing books on the shelf, I stumbled on an old notebook tucked behind the last row. It was hers, or at least it looked like it. Pages were filled with neat handwriting, but instead of thoughts or plans, it contained observations about me, dates, times, things I'd said, moments I barely remembered. Observed subject left kitchen light on again, 3:12 a.m. Subject mentioned recurring dream about drowning, log for future reference. My blood ran cold. I sat on the floor, notebook in my lap, heart pounding in my ears. This wasn't a diary. It was a logbook. I didn't confront her that night. I couldn't. Instead, I smiled like everything was fine and pretended not to notice when she caught me watching her too closely. That night, I lay awake, listening to creaks in the old apartment. Try to remember every conversation we'd had. Was this real? Was I a part of something I didn't understand? The next morning, she was gone. A note sat on the kitchen counter. Had step out early. Don't wait up. Love, E. But something was off again. Her favorite coat was still hanging by the door. Her shoes were in place. And her phone, the same one that had received calls from Dr. Kale, was still charging by the bed. She didn't take anything. And the longer I stared at that note, the more I felt the first real wave of fear since the night she found me on that rooftop. What if I wasn't the one being saved? What if I was the experiment? The silence in the apartment was louder than ever. Ilera's absence echoed off the walls, and every sound, the hum of the fridge, the ticking clock, felt amplified in her wake. I tried to tell myself it was nothing, that she simply left in a hurry, that people forget their phones, that people forget their shoes. But I didn't believe myself. By evening, she still hadn't returned. I called her phone, even though I knew it was useless. It rang from the nightstand. I left a message anyway, trying to sound casual, but my voice shook. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the couch, her notebook in hand, rereading pages under the dim light of the living room lamp. There were more entries than I realized at first, going back further than when we met. The first one was dated a month before we even spoke. Subject observed entering apartment 3B. Disheveled, possible depressive state. Subject is isolated. No regular visitors. No immediate suspicion. She had been watching me. I thought of all the times I felt eyes on me when I walked down the hall, the brief flickers of movement through the peephole across from my door. I thought of her soft smile, her perfectly timed questions, her effortless way of making me open up. And then I remembered something I hadn't thought of in weeks. That first night we met, when she asked if I lived alone. How relieved she looked when I said yes. I knew where I had to go next. Her apartment. We'd only been inside once together. She always preferred spending time at my place, claiming hers was a mess too small, or just depressing. But now that she was gone, the mystery of that space loomed larger than ever. I stood in front of her door for a long moment, hand hovering above the knob. It turned easily. Unlocked. The smell hit me first. Not decay, not something rotting, but sterility, like a hospital. Cold, metallic, and wrong for a home. The apartment was dim, curtains drawn, and at first glance, everything looked surprisingly normal. A small couch, a table, some books. But as I stepped inside, the illusion shattered. The walls were lined with photos. Dozens of them. All of me walking into my building, me reading by my window, me asleep on my couch. All taken from different angles, with different lighting, clearly from hidden vantage points. Some were recent. Others, judging by my longer hair and hollowed-out face, were from months ago, maybe even before I moved in. My breath caught in my throat as I moved deeper into the apartment, in the bedroom. The floor was covered in files, actual manila folders labeled with strange titles. Phase I response logs, Target 3B, notes in crisp handwriting, diagrams, medical terminology I didn't understand. One folder contained transcripts, verbatim conversations I remembered having, word for word. Some were recorded during walks, others during our quiet dinners. Subject resists direct inquiry on suicidal intent. Continue subtle engagement. The worst part wasn't the surveillance. It was the fact that this wasn't the first time. In the far corner of the room was a large corkboard. It held photos of other men. Different faces, different places, all labeled with numbers, dates, outcomes. Some were marked, failed, some removed. Only 2, including a recent one of me, were labeled active. I stumbled back, heart pounding, ears ringing. The apartment swam before my eyes. Who was Alara, and what did she want from me? The world outside her apartment felt muffled. The sound of the street, the low hum of the city, faded to a dull whisper as I stood frozen in the middle of her bedroom, surrounded by the evidence of a life I didn't recognize. I couldn't breathe. I had walked into a carefully curated trap. But how far did this go? How many other targets had there been before me? I stumbled backward, my body heavy with disbelief, and my hands shook as I reached for my phone. I needed answers. I needed someone to help me make sense of what I just uncovered. But Alara had made sure of one thing. I was alone. I stepped out of the apartment, barely noticing the door click shut behind me. The hallway stretched before me, almost too quiet, like a vacuum. I ran my hand through my hair, struggling to breathe normally, and I glanced down at my phone. It was silent. No messages. No calls. I quickly scrolled to my contacts, my thumb hovering over Lena's name, a former friend, one I trusted, someone who might be able to offer clarity. I hesitated. If I told Lena the truth, would she believe me? Would anyone? A sick feeling curled in my stomach. Every call I made, every text I sent, could have been monitored. I put the phone down and sank into the nearest chair, rubbing my temples as the weight of the situation settled on me. The apartment, the photos, the files. It was all far too calculated to be coincidence. I was a project, a subject, a victim of something much bigger than me. The more I tried to think of it as a simple betrayal, the less it made sense. Why was Alara doing this? Who was she working for? As I mulled over the possibilities, I saw her face again in my mind's eye. That smile, the sweetness, the way she seemed to appear when I needed someone the most. I suddenly felt something press against my chest. Something cold. A reflection. I turned toward the small mirror on the wall. A simple, vintage piece framed in bronze. It looked unassuming, the kind of thing you might overlook in a cluttered room. But this time, I couldn't look away. My face, my body, my mind screamed to stop, but my feet betrayed me, pulling me closer. Something flickered in the glass. A movement. For a split second, I saw her. Alara. She wasn't standing in front of me. She wasn't behind me. She was inside the mirror. I blinked. It wasn't real. It couldn't be. But there she was, smiling as though she were waiting for me to realize what had been happening all along. Before I could react, the image vanished. I turned to mirror, feeling a rising dread as I scanned my reflection, searching for any sign of what had just happened. There was nothing. I was alone. But I knew. Somehow I knew I wasn't. She was still here. The thought made my skin crawl, and I backed away from the mirror, my legs weak, my pulse racing. Was this a part of the experiment? Some kind of psychological game she had been playing on me? I couldn't stay in that apartment any longer. I had to get out, find answers, and find her before whatever this was consumed me completely. I couldn't stay in the apartment any longer. The walls felt too close, as though they were pressing in on me, watching my every move. I needed fresh air. I needed distance from everything that had happened in the past few hours. I grabbed my coat, my hands still trembling from what I had just seen in the mirror. The face, the eyes, the smile. I didn't know what I was looking for out there, but I had to leave. The streets, though dark and unfamiliar, felt like the only place I could breathe again. As I stepped outside, the chilly air bit my skin, and the noise of the city began to take over, but wasn't enough to drown out the pounding in my head. I walked aimlessly, lost in my thoughts. Ilara's face kept flashing in my mind. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her, but it wasn't the Ilara I knew. It wasn't the sweet, kind girl who had saved me from myself. No, this was a stranger, someone who had been lying to me from the very start. The more I thought about it, the more pieces of the puzzle started falling into place. Her sudden interest in my life, her insistence on knowing everything about me. She had been studying me, learning about my weaknesses, my fears, my hopes. And now I was just another person in a long line of victims. But the mirror, that moment in the mirror, it couldn't have been a coincidence. It was too real, too vivid. Had she done something to make me see that? Was there something hidden inside me? Some key to understanding why I had been chosen? I needed answers. And to get them, I had to go back. The apartment loomed ahead, its dark windows like hollow eyes watching me from the street. I took a deep breath, tried to steady my nerves, and walked back to the building. As I reached the entrance, I noticed a small envelope wedged under the door. My heart skipped a beat. I bent down and picked it up. The paper felt thick, almost heavy in my hands. There was no return address, no name, just a single word scrawled in dark ink. Look. I ripped it open, unfolding the paper inside. The note was brief, the handwriting shaky and urgent. You don't know the whole story. The truth is worse than you think. Trust no one. The message sent a cold shiver down my spine. Who was this? Was it Ilara? Or someone else? Someone who knew more than they were letting on? My pulse quickened as I scanned the note, looking for any other clue, any sign of where to go from here. But there was nothing more. No address, no hint, only that cryptic warning. I folded the paper back into the envelope and slipped it into my pocket. The weight of the note, combined with the increasing sense of dread that was tightening its grip on me, was almost too much to bear. I needed to find Ilara. I had to know why she was doing this. But I also knew one thing for sure. There was no going back. Whatever I was about to discover, it would change everything. The darkness in the apartment felt suffocating. The note in my pocket weighed heavy, and the gnawing feeling that something was deeply wrong continued to haunt me. As I stood at the entrance, I hesitated for a moment, unsure whether I should go inside. But I couldn't stop now. There was too much at stake, too many unanswered questions that needed to be addressed. I stepped through the door. The familiar creak of the old wood beneath my feet, barely audible over the deafening silence of the space. The apartment was eerily quiet. No sound of Ilara moving around or humming her favorite tunes. Just silence. I made my way through the hallway, my heart pounding with every step. The feeling of being watched had intensified, but I pushed it aside. I had no choice but to keep going. As I approached the living room, I glanced at the door to her bedroom. It was slightly ajar, but I could hear no movement. I tried to push away the creeping sense of unease that wrapped itself around my chest. Instead of heading for the bedroom, I made my way into the kitchen, trying to distract myself. It was there, on the counter, that I saw something that stopped me dead in my tracks. The envelope, the one with the mysterious note. It wasn't in my pocket anymore. I didn't remember taking it out. I swallowed hard, my mind racing. Had she been here? Was she inside the apartment with me? The thought sent a shiver down my spine, but I forced myself to breathe. I checked the rest of the kitchen, but there was no sign of her. The apartment was still empty. I was just about to leave the room when something caught my eye. The floorboard by the sink was slightly raised, almost as if it had been pried up recently. Curiosity gripped me, and without thinking, I knelt down to inspect it closer. It didn't take long to lift the floorboard. Underneath, I found a hidden compartment. My fingers trembled as I reached inside, pulling out a small, dusty box. The box was old, and as it was scratched and worn, as though it had been handled many times before. I opened it carefully, and the contents made my blood run cold. Inside was a collection of photographs. Some were of me, others of Alara, but what unsettled me the most were the images of people I didn't recognize. Strangers, all captured in moments of distress, their faces contorted in fear. But it wasn't just the photos that unnerved me. There were notes scribbled on the backs of each one, detailing the date, location, and sometimes a brief description of the person. These weren't just pictures. These were trophies. I sat back on my heels, staring at the box in disbelief. This couldn't be real. Alara wasn't just playing me. She was playing a much darker game, one that I had unknowingly become a part of. I needed to understand. I needed answers. The apartment had once felt like a safe space, a place for healing. But now, it was a place of secrets, of lies buried beneath the surface. I picked up the photographs and tucked them into my jacket, my mind spinning with possibilities. Alara had been hiding something from me, something much darker than I had ever imagined. The sound of footsteps echoed in the hallway. My heart leaped into my throat as I turned toward the sound. Had she come back? I hurriedly hid the box and photographs, hoping she wouldn't find out that I had been snooping. But when the footsteps stopped just outside the door, I realized I wasn't sure if I wanted to come back, or if I was more afraid of what I'd learn as she did. The apartment felt suffocating as I stood frozen by the door. The footsteps had stopped just outside, but the silence that followed was almost more nerve-wracking than any sound. My mind raced, trying to process everything I had just discovered: the hidden compartment, the photographs, the notes. All signs pointed to something far more sinister than a simple deception. Alara wasn't just hiding something from me. She was orchestrating something, and I had unwittingly become a part of it. I needed to know the truth. There was no turning back now. The door creaked slightly, and the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I held my breath, straining to hear. I wanted to bolt out of the apartment, to run far away from everything that had happened here, but I couldn't. I had to confront her. I had to face whatever it was that had been lurking in the shadows of our relationship. The door opened just a crack, and I saw her face, her eyes wide with surprise, though they quickly shifted to a cool, calculating expression. "Alara," I said, my voice hoarse from the tension. "We need to talk." She stepped inside, closing the door behind her without a word. The atmosphere between us felt thick with unspoken questions, and for a moment, neither of us moved. I could see it in her eyes. The same coldness I had seen before, but now it felt much more ominous. She was hiding something, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to know what it was anymore. But there was no turning back. I had already come too far. "About what?" she asked, her tone flat, as though she wasn't surprised by my confrontation. "You've been lying to me," I said, my voice trembling with a mixture of anger and disbelief. "About everything. The photos, the notes. You've been keeping secrets from me, Alara, and I'm not leaving until I know what's really going on." Her lips curled into a small, tight smile, though there was no warmth in it. "You've been digging around, haven't you?" she said softly. "I knew you'd find out eventually, but I didn't expect you to get this far." I stared at her, my heart pounding in my chest. "What is all of this? Why are you doing this to me?" She stepped closer, her eyes never leaving mine. "You're not the first one," she said, almost in a whisper. You won't be the last. It's always the same. You get close, you let your guard down, and then, just when you think you're safe, I pull the rug out from under you. My mind reeled. You've done this before? To other people? Ilera nodded slowly, a sadistic gleam in her eyes. I've done this 100 times. Maybe more. It's always the same. They get too comfortable, too trusting. And then, when they're at their weakest, I strike. I stumbled back, unable to comprehend what she was saying. Why me? Why did you choose me? She paused for a moment, her gaze softening just slightly, though there was no warmth in it, because you were perfect for it. You were broken, vulnerable, and you believed in me. That's all it takes. I shook my head in disbelief. You're sick, I muttered, taking a step back. You've been manipulating me, using me, for your own game, and I've been too blind to see it. Ilera's smile widened. I never made you do anything, remember? You let me in. You trusted me. And now you'll see how deep this goes. I felt a cold chill wash over me. This was no longer just about her lying to me. This was something darker. I had to end it now, before she could hurt anyone else. I'm done, I said firmly, taking another step back. I'm leaving, and you're not going to do this to anyone else. For the first time, a flicker of panic crossed her face. You can't leave, she said, her voice sharp. You don't know what you're up against. But I didn't care anymore. I had to get out of here, away from her twisted web of lies and manipulation. I turned and walked toward the door, but as my hand touched the handle, I heard her voice, low and dangerous. You don't know the truth, she said. You think you've uncovered everything, but you haven't even scratched the surface. I paused, my hand still on the door. Part of me wanted to understand the full extent of her game, but I knew deep down that some truths were better left hidden. I know enough, I replied, my voice steady, and that's all that matters. With that, I opened the door and stepped into the hallway, leaving her behind. The door clicked shut with a finality that echoed through the empty apartment. I wasn't sure if I had escaped her grasp, or if this was just the beginning of something much worse. But one thing was certain, I wasn't going to let her win. The hours passed slowly, and the sun dipped beneath the horizon, casting long shadows over the city. I stood outside the apartment, the weight of everything that had happened settling heavy in my chest. The days of uncertainty, the unanswered questions, the feeling of being watched. It was all finally coming to an end. With each step, I moved closer to the apartment, the memories of what I had found still fresh in my mind. The hidden messages, the photographs, the disturbing realization that she had been manipulating me from the very start. I had been a pawn in her twisted game, and now I was ready to confront the truth. As I entered the apartment building, the familiar scent of the hallway filled the air, stale and cold, as if it had been waiting for me. I took a deep breath and made my way to her door. The door was slightly ajar, just as it had been when I first found it. The quiet buzz of my own heartbeat was the only sound I could hear as I pushed it open. Her apartment was exactly how I remembered it, neat, tidy, and eerily still. But something was different. There was no sign of her. The absence of her presence in the room felt suffocating, as though the apartment itself was holding its breath, waiting for the truth to be revealed. I moved slowly through the apartment, my eyes scanning every inch. The memories of the past few months swirled in my mind. The quiet moments we shared, the laughter, the affection, and then the growing sense of unease that followed. It had all been a lie. All of it. I reached her bedroom, where I had once believed she was just like anyone else, a person with hopes and dreams, hiding behind her walls. But now I knew the truth. There were no dreams, only a twisted game. She had been playing me, just as she had played countless others before me. On the bed lay a letter neatly folded, its surface slightly creased as though it had been handled many times. I picked it up, my hands trembling as I read the words. I'm sorry, but I had to do this. It was never about us. It was about the game, and you were just another piece. Don't look for me. You won't find me. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. She had been using me, not just for the thrill of the chase, but for something darker, something I would never understand. I stood there for a moment, the weight of the revelation pressing down on me. I had been a fool to trust her, but I was no longer that person. I was stronger now, wiser, and I knew I had to move on. The silence in the apartment was deafening as I turned and walked out. The door clicked shut behind me, and with it, the final chapter of this twisted tale came to an end. I had been a part of her game, but now I was free. I stepped into the hallway, taking a deep breath. The world outside was waiting, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was ready to face it. The door to her apartment closed behind me with a soft click, but the silence that followed felt like an echo, reverberating in my mind long after I left. My fingers still trembled as I fumbled with my keys, trying to lock the door to my own apartment. There was no peace. Not yet. I had found her letter, read the harsh words she had left behind, and I had thought that would be the end, that I could walk away and leave the past behind. But now, every step I took in the quiet hallway felt like a reminder that something wasn't finished yet. I had uncovered her lies, but was that all there was to it? Or was there more? As I reached my own door, my thoughts were a blur. I wanted to believe that I was free of her manipulation, that I had escaped unscathed, but something deep inside me nagged at me. She was still out there, and despite everything, I still couldn't shake the feeling that she was watching me. I stepped inside my apartment and locked the door behind me, but it felt like I was being watched. My gaze flickered to the window. The city lights outside cast long shadows across the floor, but something felt off. The quiet was too still, too complete. My heart raced as I made my way to the window, pulling the curtains aside just a little. Nothing. The streets below were empty, dark, lifeless. But then I saw it, a shadow across the alleyway. It was subtle, barely perceptible, but it was there. Someone was standing, hidden in the darkness. I felt my stomach drop as I realized who it was. Her. For a moment, I just stared, unable to process what I was seeing. She was standing there, her figure barely visible, shrouded by the night. Her face was turned away, but I could feel her presence like a heavy weight pressing against me. I took a step back, the blood rushing to my ears. She was here. Somehow, she had found me. She hadn't just disappeared. She had been watching me, waiting for me to let my guard down. I reached for my phone, but my hands were shaking too badly. The screen lit up, and I found her number. For a moment, I hesitated. Was I really ready to confront her again? Could I do this? Without thinking, I hit call. The phone rang twice, and then I heard her voice. Did you really think you could walk away? Her voice was calm, eerily calm, as though nothing had happened, as if we hadn't just been through hell. I swallowed, my throat dry. I thought you were gone. I thought this was over. She chuckled, the sound sending a chill down my spine. Oh, it's far from over. But you're not ready to understand yet. Before I could respond, the line went dead. The sudden silence that followed felt suffocating. I lowered the phone slowly, still staring out the window at the spot where I had seen her. The alley was empty now, the shadow gone. I turned away, my mind a whirlwind of confusion. What had she meant by that? Why was she still playing games with me? She had already won, hadn't she? But as I sat down on the couch, I realized something. This wasn't just about the past. It wasn't about the lies, or the manipulation, or the game she had played. No, it was something deeper, something more twisted. She wasn't finished with me, and it was clear she was going to make sure that I never would be. I had thought I could walk away. But maybe, just maybe, I had walked right into the next trap.